Welcome to the first pancake. Let's dive in. Let's get acquainted with the general components of a spreadsheet. First of all, the whole workbook is referred to as a workbook or a spreadsheet. Each page within it is referred to as a page or a sheet, which has its own individual menu. If you want to add more sheets, simply click the plus button in the bottom left-hand corner, and within the menu you can go in and delete or rename, which we'll get into in a minute. If you wanted to duplicate an already existing page, you can duplicate that to have the exact same formulas and information brought over to the new page. From there, you can also, in the menu, copy a page to an existing spreadsheet or create a new spreadsheet with just that page. And you can rename each tab individually. We're going to start by renaming this one to Essentials. So next, to help with organization of data, we're going to color that tab by going into the menu and clicking Change Color, and you can select whatever color you like to match whatever works for your system. You can also protect sheets so that other people can't edit them, or hide sheets altogether if you don't need them as often, which you can find underneath the hamburger menu on the left. Now let's take a look at the component parts of the spreadsheet itself. Spreadsheets are made up of a combination of cells. Those cells are referenced by coordinates and are organized into columns, and they're organized into rows. Now let's bring in some fake data so you can see how this all comes together. We'll put the headings across the top. We've got first name and last name. Then we'll have full name and phone number, and we'll bring in a selection of first names. Then we'll bring in a selection of last names. Now let's bring in our first formula. We're going to want to combine the first name and last name with a space in between. To do this, we'll use the concatenate formula. We reference the first cell in first name. We add a manual space in there in quotes, and then we reference the second column for last name to close that out, and it will ask us if we want to auto-populate the rest. In this case, we want to. All right, that went pretty quickly, so let's recap. Spreadsheets are made up of cells, rows, and columns. Each box is a cell. Each cell has coordinates shown inside of the name box, in this case, cell B2. The coordinates are made up of a column letter and a row number. Together, you would get column or cell B2. In this case, this cell then becomes C5. Think like Battleship. Now, what about that formula? Formulas are named actions that act on the data within cells. Formulas are comprised of three main parts. They always start with an equal sign. They are named. In this case, we used concatenate. And they intake data to act upon. In this case, cell A5, a blank space, and cell B5. Concatenate combines the data from multiple cells to create a string, a text-based piece of data. The cell coordinates are used to reference data within them rather than having to rewrite the data. The space is added manually by wrapping a space in double quotes. Double quotes are used to represent the start and end of a string when typing it into a formula. Now, some other quick tricks. When you get really comfortable with sheets, these will come in handy all the time. If you're using a Mac, you can hit Command /, which opens a menu of keyboard shortcuts. You can look for things about editing, the menus, formatting, data, all sorts of different shortcuts that make your life easier once you've gotten the hang of the basics. You may have noticed that in the video we just saw, you can select many rows or many columns very, very quickly without scrolling, and that was done with keyboard shortcuts. We'll do a whole separate video about this to make life a little bit easier. Alright, so let's make this a little bit easier to read. Those headings are kind of hidden. So let's bold it. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And we'll make the row height a little bit bigger by dragging the bottom of that row to be a little bit taller. You can then center, however works for you to style this. It just makes it easier for you to read, easier for anybody using your spreadsheet to read. We can also delete unnecessary columns and rows. So if you have a smaller sheet, you can minimize the viewing area and make it a little bit easier. Now this runs into an interesting problem. When you scroll, that first heading disappears. By grabbing the thicker gray bar on the left there, you can actually lock the heading at the top so that it's easier to read even further. And you can do the same thing on the left side by moving the gray bar out as well. Now to demonstrate this, I'm going to increase a bunch of columns so that you can see it properly and watch it scroll. This allows you to have the first or however many columns you want and however many headings you want to keep your data easier to read as you go. Like and subscribe if you learned something. And remember, anything worth doing well is worth doing badly first.